Some stories refuse to die. In 1820s Kentucky, whispers of betrayal and dishonor grew into one of the bloodiest scandals the young state had ever seen. It was a tale of love and vengeance, poison and rope, a tragedy that ended with two lovers buried in one coffin. It began with Anna Cooke, a woman of good family. Her father, Giles Cooke, owned land and enslaved people in Virginia before moving into Kentucky. In her youth, Anna was courted by Solomon, a rising star in law and politics. Their affair ended in disgrace when Anna bore a stillborn child. Solomon denied the baby and, according to whispers, even mocked her. For Anna, that humiliation never healed. Anna carried that shame like a scar. In the rigid society of early Kentucky, a woman branded in this way was considered ruined. Suitors vanished. Friends turned cold. It was a humiliation that burned for years. By the time Jeroboam came into her life, Anna was 35 years old and still single, a fact that, in early 19th century Kentucky, carried a heavy weight. In that era, most women were married by their late teens or early 20s. To reach 35 without a husband meant being marked as a spinster, a word that carried not just pity but scorn. For a woman already scarred by scandal, the combination was devastating. Kentucky in the 1820s was still frontier country in many ways. Frankfort, where Anna lived, was the state capital, but hardly a city by modern standards. Only a few thousand residents, dirt streets that turned to mud after rains, smoke from wood stoves clinging to the air. Society was small, tightly knit, and reputation was everything. The upper classes, lawyers, politicians, merchants, and plantation families, judged harshly. To be an unmarried woman of 35, especially one remembered for a past disgrace, meant whispers in the marketplace, women looking away in church pews, and fewer invitations to social gatherings. Daily life made the divide even sharper. Men could still make their way with careers in law, politics, or the growing world of business, but women were expected to marry, keep households, and raise children. Land and inheritance almost always passed through men. Without marriage, a woman like Anna had little formal standing, relying on family connections or quiet reclusion. This is what Jeroboam stepped into. He was barely 19 when he met her, a fiery, ambitious young lawyer who admired Solomon's celebrity, but who became captivated by the reclusive Anna. He found an excuse to visit her under the pretense of borrowing a book, and in her company he discovered not just beauty, but a sharp mind and a shared love for poetry and romantic novels. Despite the 16-year gap between them, Jeroboam proposed marriage. For Anna, his devotion was intoxicating. Few men of her class would have risked their reputations to court her. Yet Jeroboam did more than court her. He pledged his life to avenge her honor. When she told him that she could not marry unless Solomon Sharp paid for what he had done, Jeroboam accepted the challenge without hesitation. Beauchamp approached the house at approximately 2 o'clock in the morning on November 7, 1825. In his confession, he described the encounter. "I put on my mask, drew my dagger, and proceeded to the door. I knocked 3 times, loud and quick," Colonel Sharp said. "Who's there?" "Covington," I replied. Quickly. Sharp's foot was heard upon the floor. I saw under the door as he approached without a light. I drew my mask over my face, and immediately Colonel Sharp opened the door. I advanced into the room, and with my left hand I grasped his right wrist. The violence of the grasp made him spring back, and trying to disengage his wrist, he said, "What Covington is this?" I replied, "John A. Covington." "I don't know you," said Colonel Sharp. Mrs. Sharp appeared at the partition door and then disappeared. Seeing her disappear, I said in a persuasive tone of voice, "Come to the light, Colonel, and you will know me." And pulling him by the arm, he came readily to the door, and still holding his wrist with my left hand, I stripped my hat and handkerchief from over my forehead and looked into Sharp's face. He knew me, the more readily I imagined by my long bush curly suit of hair. He sprang back and exclaimed in a tone of horror and despair, "Great God, it is him!" And as he said that, he fell on his knees. I let go of his wrist and grasped him by the throat, dashing him against the facing of the door, and muttered in his face, "Die, you villain." As I said that, I plunged the dagger to his heart. The killing stunned Kentucky. This was no backwoods fight. This was the assassination of the state's attorney general. After a 13-day trial in Frankfort, Jeroboam was found guilty of murder and sentenced to death by hanging. Anna insisted on staying with him in his jail cell. Together they wrote, The Confession of Jeroboam Beauchamp, a long manuscript they hoped would be published and win Jeroboam's sympathy. It admitted his guilt but spun their love into a romantic tale, one they thought might convince Governor Joseph de Shaw to commute the sentence, but the manuscript went unpublished. Desperate, the couple was accused of trying to bribe a guard, then begged Governor de Shaw for a stay of execution. Their plea was denied on July 5th. With death certain, they turned back to their pact. They would die together. Anna smuggled laudanum into the jail, hidden in her bosom, and the two drank it. But the poison failed. Both lived, sickened and humiliated. As the execution date of July 7, 1826 drew near, they tried again. Anna swallowed more laudanum, but when she could not keep it down, she took a knife she had hidden and stabbed herself in the abdomen. Jeroboam did the same. Anna bled heavily and collapsed. Jeroboam kissed her lips and whispered, "For you I lived, for you I die." Fearful Jeroboam might bleed to death before the law could take him, jailers rushed him to the gallows. Some 5,000 people filled Frankfort streets, men, women, and children. This would be the first legal hanging in Kentucky. Too weak to stand, Jeroboam was held upright as the noose was fixed. He told clergy he had found salvation the day before and asked the band to play Bonaparte's Retreat from Moscow. Moments later, the trap fell. He convulsed in the short drop noose until his body finally went limp. In the 1820s, hangings were public spectacles. Executions were carried out in open fields or on the courthouse square, with crowds sometimes numbering in the thousands. The method was the short drop. The condemned stood on a cart or on a trap that fell only inches, leaving them to strangle. Unlike the later long drop that broke the neck instantly, the short drop meant slow death by suffocation. Victims thrashed for minutes, their faces swelling, their eyes bulging, until their movements ceased. Sheriffs were often reluctant to preside, and doctors sometimes stood by to pronounce death only after the body hung limp for 15 to 20 minutes. For the crowd, it was part justice, part theater. Back in the jail, Anna was dying. She succumbed to her wound within hours. Jeroboam's father claimed the bodies. Following Jeroboam's written instructions, they were buried together in a single coffin, Anna's head resting on his arm wrapped around her bosom. A month earlier, Anna had written a 32-line epitaph for their grave. Their bodies were laid in Maple Grove Cemetery in Bloomfield, not Frankfort Cemetery as often repeated. It remains odd and unsettling that officials honored this request. Jeroboam had killed a sitting attorney general. Anna had conspired with him. Yet still, their wish to be buried in each other's arms was granted. Their confession was published later that year, as were Anna's letters, though some doubted their authenticity. In response, Dr. Leander Sharp, Solomon's brother, drafted a rebuttal to defend his slain brother's honor, though threats kept it from being published at the time. Decades later, the manuscript was found in the Sharp home. The Kentucky tragedy captured imaginations far beyond the state. Edgar Allan Poe began but never finished a play about it titled Polition. Robert Penn Warren later turned it into World Enough and Time. At least 9 other literary works followed, each retelling the same haunting story. And so it endures, a tale of love, vengeance, poison, blood, and rope. A scandal that gripped Kentucky in its youth and has never truly been forgotten. Even now, deep in the ground, they still lay, bones grasping each other's, forever, or as long as the earth exists. Thank you for joining us in another page from the past. See you next time. Entombed below in others' arms, the husband and the wife repose, safe from life's never-ending storms, and safe from all their cruel foes. A child of evil fate she lived, a villain's wiles her peace had crossed, the husband of her heart revived, the happiness she long had lost. He heard her tale of matchless woe, and burning for revenge he rose and laid her base seducer low, and struck dismay to virtue's foes. Reader, if honor's generous blood e'er warmed thy breast, here drop a tear, and let the sympathetic flood deep in thy mind its treasures bear. A father or a mother thou, thy daughter view in grief's despair. Then turn and see the villain low, and here let fall the grateful tear. A brother or a sister thou, dishonored see this sister dear. Then turn and see the villain low, and here let fall the grateful tear. Daughter of virtue, moist thy tear, this tomb of love and honor claim. For thy defense the husband here laid down in youth his life and fame. His wife disdained a life forlorn, without her heart's loved honored lord. Then, reader, hear the fortunes mourn, who for their love their lifeblood poured.